Well, hello everyone. It's the Joe Grotesque Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grotesque, obviously. So I guess some of you might be wondering why I've decided to start this whole podcasting. Well, this is something I've dabbled in the past. Let's go back to 2007. I was doing a blog talk radio show called Diabolical Radio with a friend of mine, and I did that for a couple of years. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, where I tried to do the Thought Process podcast, and I just wasn't too happy with the end result of that, and more or less felt kind of jaded with the whole concept and put the idea of a podcast on the back burner. But now I have a much better idea of where I want to go with it. So this is just kind of a continuance of what you normally see on the YouTube channel. It's just in podcast format, and I'd really like to get some guests on the show, but we'll see how that pans out. If nothing else, for the meantime, maybe I can replay some of my old interviews, as not very many other people have heard them. So all that aside, I wanted to make the focus of this first episode on my passion behind toy collecting. Why does a guy that's almost middle-aged care about collecting toys? Well, it's not so much the idea of me being as old as I am and being infatuated with toys. It's just an infatuation that never left me from childhood. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know there's a multitude of guys and gals out there that collect comics, collect toys, collect all kinds of nerdy stuff. Heck, even if you're not into the geeky stuff, there's guys out there that collect cars and guns, girls that collect shoes. Everybody's a collector of some sort. So I think at this point, though, the 40-year-old virgin stigma has kind of vanished a little bit, mainly because of the nerdiness that has overtaken Hollywood. The fact that San Diego Comic-Con and other Comic-Cons are like a gathering point for celebrities. So all you geeks out there, let this be your safe space. Wow, that was almost cringe-worthy, wasn't it? Safe space, that's an overused term. But, yeah, don't take it too seriously. I wanted to take this opportunity to share a story with you guys and gals. It's story time, children. So it's no secret that many people my age were brought up on Masters of the Universe. So this story goes back to when I was about 4 years old, and I was at a Kmart with my mother, and unbeknownst to me, they were having some kind of sales event with the Masters of the Universe action figures, and there were two guys there, one dressed up in a He-Man costume, the other dressed in a Skeletor costume. Now, these were rubbery costumes that resembled the actual action figures, and I can vividly remember my mother pushing me in the shopping cart up to He-Man, and as we approach He-Man, I reach up to grab his muscle, and I'm 4 years old, so I have no idea that this isn't really He-Man, so I'm super excited. He-Man gives me a pat on the back, then a thumbs up. The next thing I can remember is strolling on over to the toy section, where I got to pick out a figure, and I chose Moss Man. And I suppose the reason I remember that it was Moss Man is bringing him home that night and opening up the package, and his scent just permeated and I guess stuck in my brain because I'll never forget that piney smell. It was robust, to say the least. Anyway, rewind back to the store as I'm picking out Moss Man. Out of the corner of my eye, down the aisle, I see Skeletor. At first, I really didn't know what to think, because bear in mind, I'm just a little kid, and I really think this is Skeletor, so I have no idea what his intentions are. And lo and behold, Skeletor starts walking down the aisle towards me, and he gets closer and closer. I grab hold of my mother, and I'm freaking out. And once he gets within 2 feet of us, I close my eyes, hoping he'll go away. And luckily he did, because the guy inside the costume obviously knew he was scaring the bejesus out of a little kid. But I tell you what, I will never forget that. It's one of my most vivid memories. It traumatized me for quite some time. And that's really odd, because as the years went on, I found myself more and more attracted to Skeletor. If you gave me the choice of an item that had Skeletor or He-Man on it, I'm gonna choose Skeletor. And why is that? That's some kind of weird psychological thing. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. But regardless of that happening, I maintained my fandom of Masters of the Universe for many, many years. And of course, that became the foundation for many, many other toy lines and cartoons for years to come. The next step was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but we'll get into that on another podcast episode. So I'd really, really like to hear some memories and stories from you guys. Maybe you have something that's akin to my story. If you do, please leave it in the comments section because I read all of my comments and I try to reply to all of them as well. And that's where I'm going to cut things off for this episode. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. Stay tuned. The more you listen, the more I'll frequently release these things. So until next time, thanks for listening. Stay geeky. Take care. I'm out.